Empire of Storms was so good. Like, people said that Queen of Shadows and Empire of Storms were the two best books, and you saw what happened when I read Queen of Shadows. All it took was Selena, Aelin, and the gang. Lysandra as a cat. So I had really high hopes for Empire of Storms, and I had a reading slump about a third of the way through. It was a really hard reading slump, and I was like, why is everyone saying that this book is one of the best when I can't get through it? And then I got over that. I had my little hissy fit and I got over it, and it was insane. The rest of it was just so good. But whereas I was an absolute emotional crying mess at the end of Queen of Shadows, I was so angry at the end of Empire of Storms. I was just fuming. Like, I'm a fire sign, but wow, I was angry. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my review, book talk, book discussion of Empire of Storms by Sarah J. Maas, as I read the Sarah J. Maas series Throne of Glass for the very first time. A brief spoiler warning, of course there will be spoilers to Empire of Storms in this video, so if you haven't read it, please stop and go read the book and then come back after. This book is so complex in plot. It took me so long to understand it. So if you haven't read this book, please, you won't even be spoiled. You would just be hella confused, so don't watch it if you haven't read the book yet. So I normally start these videos with a few general pointers on the book, but the only thing I had for this one was just, isn't this just sexy Pirates of the Caribbean? Like, the whole way through, I was like, this could be Pirates of the Caribbean 5 or 6. So I'm just gonna go ahead and jump straight in because I have lots to say about this book and lots to discuss with you guys. So the book opens up with the prologue with Eleanor and Gavin, and I was momentarily confused because I find family trees really hard, and I was texting my friend like, who is Eleanor? Is that Aelin's mum? And she was like, no, she was the first queen way back. You're talking 1,000 years ago. So I was trying so hard to piece together who was who, but in the end I realised it was Eleanor and Gavin. It all made sense, but still, this prologue I was momentarily confused. Obviously in the section Eleanor is talking about a future generation inheriting this war, and then obviously I knew that this was then a reference to Aelin and all her friends. So after the prologue we get back with the modern day characters, and the whole thing is overshadowed by Aelin and Rowan's desire to have sex outdoors. Why is it so funny to me that Aelin and Rowan are like, we can't do it in the woods because there's the little folk watching? And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of voyeuristic, babe. Maybe don't do that. And then of course we go to the meeting with the generals and people in charge of nations all over Aurelia, and we meet a character called Darrow, who apparently was King Orlon's lover. And I'm like, Sarah, if this is your LGBT rep, I will be so sad. This is just a Dumbledore is gay situation all over again. Like, this doesn't count as representation because you're just throwing in a random fact to tick a box. There is no other representation of Orlon here, what he's like, his life, just anything to do with him actually being gay. You can't just tell us that he was gay and that's it. That does not count as good LGBT rep. This also happens later in the book with Adrian when he's like, I've been with guys and girls. I'm like, this doesn't tick some sort of box, Sarah. Like, you can't just say Adrian's bisexual, done, there's my LGBT rep. That is not how it works. Honestly, I am trying to read these books without thinking about this, but it's so difficult at points like this, but I just try and keep out my mind and focus on the other points of the book that are actually good. When Darrow implies that Rowan is only with Aelin so he can get to a throne, and he's like, if I wanted a throne, do you really think I would go after Terrazan? Like, it's a weak ass piece of land and there's just no one there. At first I was really pissed off at Darrow not acknowledging Aelin's right to rule, and then I thought to myself, and I was like, if I had been in charge of like all these lands for about 60 years and some 19-year-old kid was like, yeah, they're actually mine, I wouldn't give them to her. I would be like, girl, wait, like, you can't just come out of nowhere and demand this. So I was really angry at Darrow. Then I was like, actually, I understand, because this is so random for Aelin just to swoop back in. The gang then discover what has been happening in Rifthold with the attack by the witches, and then they're like, let's go to Skulls Bay. Two things happened to me here. One, I was like, ooh, I love it when a series comes together. Obviously we've already been to Skulls Bay in the Assassin's Blade, and the second thing I thought was, I know that Aelin and Rowan have sex on a beach. Surely this is the beach in Skulls Bay. And guess what? I was right. The next part of the book takes place in Skulls Bay, and I was so happy. I'm such such a big Pirates of the Caribbean fan and I was just living for these scenes. I was like, yes, Aelin is a pirate. I did not know that I needed this content, but I am so happy I have it now. The return of Fenris and Gavriel and the way they behaved in this scene, I just couldn't believe that Rowan fought for so long with these dickheads. They just behaved awfully in this bit. Dorian describing Fenris as the dark-haired, bronze-skinned male, so handsome that Dorian blinked. Do not tell me that Dorian and Selena are the bi-kings and queens of this series. Those two just radiate so much chaotic bisexual energy. I do not make the rules. I just get big bi vibes from both these characters. Rolf finally agreeing to a meeting with Rowan and Dorian, and they open the door and Aelin is sat there. Oh my god, I literally freaked out. I really liked the allusions to what happened in the Assassin's Blade. For example, when Rolf mentioned the extortion at Bartab that Sam and Selena managed to rack up. I really am so glad that I did read the Assassin's Blade. I saw a few people say that it wasn't important to the series, but I really do think it adds so much, and I'm so happy I read it. Aelin looking Rowan up and down and saying, you, I don't know, but I'd like to. I just love these two together so much. I could literally watch these guys flirt all day. It was just so well done. Aelin as Selena, then introducing Lysandra as Aelin. These women will be the death of me. When Rolf agrees to fight the Valg with Aelin, and there's that line that says, tattooed skin met with scarred flesh, and then Aelin sent a little flame searing into Rolf's fingers. I feel like not only does it show Aelin as scarred, which is really good because I love to read imperfect protagonists. As someone with chronic eczema, I have like so many scars and quite dry hands, so honestly reading about Shadowhunters and Aelin with scarred hands, it sounds silly but it makes me just feel a lot better about my own skin. And secondly, I feel like it shows a moment of maturity for Aelin because now Rolf is in fact dealing with Aelin and not Selena like he was before in the Assassin's Blade. And then the Valg attack and it all turns to shit. When Rowan helps Rolf put Aelin in chains so that her power doesn't overwhelm her, at first I was like, oh, this is such a cute Ro-Aelin moment, I really appreciate it. And then when I finished the book and I was looking back, I was like, that was a really horrible foreshadowing to the end of the book. And I didn't even realise at the time, but my god. Deanna possessing Aelin was some intense shit, and I honestly thought the scene would end there. But then there was the whole battle with Lysandra, and I was like, this scene is just so long and just so tense, oh my god. One thing I did pick up is when Fenris rescues Aelin from the water and he calls her Majesty. The first thing I thought of was, oh my god, what could have been? And then later we find out that Fenris did in fact volunteer to track down Aelin and train her for Maeve, but then Rowan got the job instead, and I was just there like, wow, like what would have happened instead? In regards to Lysandra's battle scene as the sea dragon, I feel like this was really well written. I feel like the atmosphere and the tension was just perfectly done. There's that cute bit at the end of this chapter when Lysandra and Aedion are on the beach together and Lysandra is recovering and Aedion says that he's going to marry her. That was such a cute scene. Obviously we don't leave Lysandra and Aedion in the best place at the end of this book, so I kind of look back at these moments like, oh, these two were so cute in this point, because at the end they kind of hate each other. I just think these two are so cute together and so much less intense than Rowan and Aelin. I'm gonna scratch your back and then put seawater in it so it never heals, and I'm also gonna tear myself in half. But yeah, I totally don't think we're mates. Their relationship. A small English lit analysis note, I really liked the description of Lysandra turning back into a human. Once the sun had begun to set, the dragon stirred, her form shimmering and shrinking. The wolf moved then, slinging his cloak around her and sweeping her into his arms. I might be reading too much into this, but in my opinion, by Sarah describing Aedion not as a human but as a wolf in this scene, it kind of puts him on like parallel with Lysandra, which is of course how he sees himself. When Lysandra keeps saying, you shouldn't be with me, I was a common whore, and Aedion's like, no, I want to be with you, like we're equal. I feel like this description was a reiteration of this, but on a slightly more subtle level. Okay, it's time to talk about that sex scene. I knew it was coming in this book, but oh my god. I find it really funny that when Aelin gets angry, her clothes just turn into ash and fire, because this is just not practical for someone like her. For all you Shadowhunters fans watching this, I got humongous Black Stairs vibes in this scene. Not just the fact that their first time happened on a beach, but the whole theme of like constellations and planets. When Rowan says, even when this world is a forgotten whisper of dust between stars, I will love you. This obviously is just so similar to when Julian says, because when this universe was born, when it blasted into existence in fire and glory, glory. Everything that would ever exist was created. Our souls are made of that fire and glory, of the atoms of it, the fragments of stars. If you've read the book, you know exactly where I'm going. That sentence literally could be Rowan talking to Aelin instead of Julian talking to Emma. And I don't know which book came first, but someone copied someone here and someone needs to sue. Obviously the whole scene is so intense, but I feel like we still don't lose the sassy Rowan and Aelin that we know and love. This whole thing was so in character and it was definitely worth the wait. The payoff was so great, not just for me, but apparently for Rowan and Aelin as well. When they walk back to the inn and Rowan just like slips it into the reader that they had sex 3 times, his magic had left 6 nearby palm trees in splinters as he'd climaxed. Christ, like, what? I've never had an orgasm like that in my life. When Rowan and Aelin go back to the inn and there's this like awkward silence and Lysandra just says, "Nice ride." Oh my god, queen. I just love her so much. Honestly, reading this series felt like a nice refreshment for me. Throne of Glass feels a lot older than Shadowhunters, and also I know that ACOTAR is like new adult as well. Obviously I know Aelin is 19 and Rowan is like 165, but Adrian is 23, so I do feel a lot less weirder reading about these characters in opposed to reading about 16-year-old Tessa Gray in the Infernal Devices. Just silly things that instead of just like 2 characters talking about sex, but having like a whole group of friends talking about it so openly and so frankly, it just makes these books seem a lot older. It just reminds me of me and my friends talking about our hookups at uni. The gang then leave for Eelway and they spot a wyvern traveling above them and I'm just like, oh my god, it's Manon. It's Manon! Part 1 literally ends with the line, "Silence fell on the ship and Manon Blackbeak tumbled from her saddle, falling through wind and spindrift and hit the water." And then I turn the page and part 2 is a fucking Elide point of view and I was like, not now Elide, I don't care. I won't lie to you, I found the Elide and Lorcan scenes incredibly dull and hard to get through. Like, I enjoyed them at the carnival, but the whole time I was like, this could have been written in half the pages and it still would have made sense. One of the only things that I picked up on here is when Elide describes how Lorcan is doing all this like sword throwing and everyone is just like watching him. It reminded me of Madagascar, in particularly Alex the Lion, when he has his whole show and all the fans are like, "Alex the Lion!" And I'm just like, that's Lorcan throwing the knife right here. I really don't like Lorcan, and I spoke to my friend and she's like, the fandom love Lorcan, and I'm like, why? He sold Aelin in, he's so grumpy, he's just horrible. Like, him and Elide are cute, but also, come on, this is kind of toxic as fuck. Obviously they are both so stubborn, just like Aelin and Rowan were. I do think it's like an immortal Fae thing because they're just so grumpy with everyone all the time because they've just lived so long. And I will say that scene when Lorcan and Elide escape the small town and Lorcan slings Elide over his shoulder and then they're arguing about where to go and Lorcan says, "Congratulations lady, you just got yourself a guide to Eelway." He's such a stubborn, sarcastic character and their dynamic gives me big Anastasia and Dimitri vibes from Anastasia. Fast forward and then we have the battle with the Ilkin. I'm not going to say a lot about this scene, but I thought it was a really well written scene and it was a nice demonstration of just how far Aelin's power goes. However, Elide jumping in front of Lorcan and then instead Fenris biting a huge chunk off her arm. Girl, know your worth and Lorcan ain't it. And then you have Manon and Lorcan fighting over Elide and Aelin comes in and says, "We like to call it territorial male nonsense," or territorial Fae bastard works just as nicely. I feel like the whole possessiveness of the male Fae, it makes you think that the women have no control, but in reality I think they have all the control because as Lorcan describes, the men are just like dogs on their master's leash. So on the surface, if it does look like the women are being controlled by the guys, I feel like in fact it's the opposite. Ansel is back and so is Cassida the horse, and oh, I was so happy for her return. And then later you realise that because Aelin didn't tell anyone, Lorcan thought he would alert Maeve because he thought that it was a dangerous fleet. Not a good idea not to tell anyone your plans, Aelin. One thing I liked about Empire of Storms was the exploration of different friendship dynamics. In so many other YA groups, I feel like there is one friendship group and it sort of sticks to that, but in Throne of Glass there are many big friendship groups and then there are separate dynamics between those as well, which I personally find really interesting. Empire of Storm saw the start of the Rowan and Dorian bromance, and then the Lysandra and Aelin friendship was strengthened even more, and then you have the whole thing going on with the Fae bros, and then Rowan calling Adrian brother just warmed my heart. But I think my favourite moment in this book was Ansel and Aelin clinking glasses over dinner, and then Lysandra is there with her head curled up in Aelin's lap as a ghost leopard. Oh, the gals! The Manon and Dorian sex scene was so weird. Like, I just didn't see it coming. It was just so out of the blue. I also saw this post on Instagram that was like out of context things that Throne of Glass fans understand, and one of them was just invisible hands, and now I understand what the hell that means, and I am so upset that I have context for that now. Oh my god. Aelin and Manon going into the lock was just Harry Potter going into the Pensive. It was just the same thing. Don't tell me that it wasn't. These 20 or so pages were so complex and so difficult to read, but my god, when I finally understood it, the payoff was unreal. The whole thing just came together and I was just flummoxed. The flashback with Nehemia was so sad to think that Nehemia was just another piece in this puzzle. Like, she wasn't even the chosen one and she still had to sacrifice herself. Eleanor really fucked up. Eleanor revealing her plan, how she didn't think that she would be attached to Aelin, how she thought it was a totally viable and great option to palm off her war on the younger generation. To think I thought this series was just about the King's Champion contest. Oh my god, I was so naive. Can you believe Aelin fucking died? Like, she died. Like, oh my god, this poor girl. Honestly, I was super pissed off at Eleanor for just sacking off her responsibilities onto the younger generation, and then I felt so sorry for her, and I liked her a bit more when she decided to bring Aelin back to life so she could live a bit of a life. But oh my god, again a Harry Potter reference. This was just Dumbledore raising Harry like a lamb to slaughter. I'm sorry, but the amount of times nameless is my price is repeated. Yes, we get it. Aelin is the price. And then we're back on the beach and Maeve has Elide held hostage and everything goes downhill. When Maeve is explaining everything, I actually had to read the paragraphs out loud because I was just so confused, and I was like, if I don't read this out loud and super slowly, I'm gonna miss something. So I was sat there in my garden reading out loud, not caring if anyone could hear me, just like, so I did this and then I did this, and that was the only way I could understand it because this plot was just so complex and there were so many layers to it. Honestly, you think Erewhon was the bad guy, but it was Maeve all along. She's a true psycho. Like, props to her. She's a good villain. So the whole Rowan, Aelin and Lyria mate situation, as I feel like other readers did, managed to guess it before Maeve confirmed it. So I feel like her confirmation was more for Aelin and Rowan than it was for the reader's satisfaction. However, it made me realise just how young Rowan is as well. Yes, I fully get that he is over 5 centuries old, but the fact that he was able to be manipulated and controlled makes him seem really vulnerable and quite naive, and makes him seem so young in my opinion. I'm fully aware that there's that whole argument in the fandom that's like, Rowan is 500 and Aelin is 19, it's so weird. Ugh. But before even getting into the argument, which I will not do in this video because it's stupid, I will say that in this moment Rowan seemed a lot younger in my opinion, not in age but just in general like spirit. When Aelin said she worked out that her and Rowan were mates at the temple in Queen of Shadows, I was like, I knew it, I fucking knew it, and I said this in my last video, yes. Manon in this scene really wound me up. I was just like, Manon, do something, move, please. Like, Elide was annoying me because she just wouldn't stop blubbering, and I was like, Elide, I need to blubber, and I can't blubber if you're blubbering, so shut up. And Manon, I was just like, please do something. And we find out that she didn't because Aelin actually snuck the word keys into her pocket. But honestly, for a hot second, I was like, Manon, come on, Manon, what are you doing? Where is Aelin? Where is my wife? No. Don't even talk. What? Oh my god, like, apart from this just being absolutely heart-wrenching, Aelin really thought of it all. Like, all her plans managed to come together. As we see as well when all the allies appear at the end of this book ready to help her. Lysandra then saying that the plan was for Aelin to sacrifice herself and then Lysandra to give up the rest of her life pretending to be Aelin. I was so shook by that. Like, that was so selfless of Lysandra. And then Aelin gets pissed at her. He's such a dick. Like, I'm sorry, I liked him, but at this point I just, what a bad character. Why would he get annoyed at Lysandra for that? So when the allies turned up, obviously it was such a bittersweet moment, but I just felt so bad for Aelin because I feel like her whole life, she doesn't think anyone's gonna turn up for her. She just gives herself all the time and she feels like she's gonna get nothing back. And then at the end, everyone turns up rooting for her. Like, they're all looking for Aelin Galathinius and she's just not there to see it. It made me so upset. She's always painted as quite selfish, but but I feel like from Heir of Fire up to now, she's actually quite selfless in her decisions and actions. When Aedion is thinking about that with all these allies, they might actually have a fool's chance of winning this war, and he says if Chaol and Nesryn could gather forces from the southern continent. And then I remembered that I have to read Tower of Dawn next, and I have to read about Chaol and Nesryn, and I lost it. I absolutely lost it. If you follow me on my Bookstagram and you saw me losing it happen live, please let me know, because I was fuming. Seriously, for 10 minutes I just lost it. I was just like, why would Sarah think that her fan base would now want to read about Chaol and Nesryn after this? Like, why did she think that was a good idea? If you read Throne of Glass when it came out, when it was first published, I feel so sorry for you, and I totally understand if any of you freaked out upon finding out that Sarah's next novel would be Tower of Dawn. Like, I totally understand, and I feel like I reacted the same way that you probably did as well. However, I will read Tower of Dawn. I did have plenty of messages on my Bookstagram saying I should read it, it's worth it, the payoff is good, you find out more information, so yes, I will read it, but I won't be damn happy about it when I do. Why do the ends of these books leave me such a goddamn mess? Like, you saw me at the end of Queen of Shadows in my last video. I was just as much of a mess at the end of Empire of Storms as well. It felt like closure, but also not closure, because everyone was going off to do their separate things. It felt like everyone had their very own mission, and there was closure in that regard, but also not closure because Aelin had just gone so far away. So I think it was that, coupled with the fact that I wouldn't go back to this moment of events until the end of Tower of Dawn, that really just like sent me over the edge. And I was just like, honestly, how the hell am I meant to read Tower of Dawn now? Okay, just some general points to conclude on. I feel like Lysandra is just so good and so iconic in her own right. I don't know if she is slept upon in the fandom. As you can tell, I am relatively new to the Sarah J Maas fandom, but please take me in, I want to be involved. I just think all that she did in this book, all the battles that she fought in and that she shapeshifted into different animals to participate in, to save everyone's asses, and the fact that she sacrificed her own life to pretend to be Aelin for the rest of her days, I just think that was so noble of her, and I just think she's a great character, and I'm so upset if people do sleep on her, so please don't. Bonus points for Dorian in this book. I feel like he had a lot of growth in Empire of Storms. In my opinion, he grew up a lot in this book and he's more responsible. I feel like he's fully accepted his position of the king of Ardalan. I don't know, he just seems a lot more badass, maybe due to the fact that he shagged a witch. And the last general point I actually had when I was mid Angry Run, and I don't know why, but I was like, when Chaol finds out what happened to Aelin, he's gonna be so upset. Like, he loved her, and yes, I know it was messy and I know it didn't work out, but it's just horrific what happened to her, and I don't know why, I just felt for Chaol in this moment. Obviously it's nowhere near as bad for Chaol as it is for Rowan, but I just think this news of Aelin is going to break him. Okay, so that's the end of my Empire of Storms discussion. As you can tell, I really did like this book, but in a totally different way to how I liked Queen of Shadows. Queen of Shadows for me was a lot more emotional, whereas Empire of Storms was a lot more action-based and plot twisting. I really think everything came together in this book in terms of the larger scheme of things. In Queen of Shadows, everything in Aelin/Celaena's life came together so much more on a very small scale. She got like all her debts in order and then moved on, whereas in Empire of Storms, I feel like the larger overarch of Eleanor's promise and Aelin's fate, I feel like that all came to head in Empire of Storms. Honestly, I now understand why these two books are fan favourites. So please give this video a like if you have enjoyed it. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already. And I am now going to go begrudgingly read Tower of Dawn, try and get through it, and probably complain about it the whole time. See you guys next time.